Hey everybody, I'm back with coaching tip number 16. Number 16 is about making rules on your team. My basic suggestion is try to minimize the number of rules that you have for your team. And the main reason is the more rules you have, the more complicated it gets to keep your team running well. You would think that having lots of rules makes your team function really strictly and disciplined and in order, but actually it gets harder because you end up enforcing all your rules, and that becomes a bit of a nightmare. And also, the kids on your teams probably are pretty good kids, and if something goes wrong, it's probably not their fault. So, I mean, here's a good example. A lot of coaches will say things like, if you're late to practice twice, you can't play in the next game. Or if you miss a practice, you can't play in the next game. Well, what happens is then you get caught enforcing those rules when you might not want to. Maybe it wasn't the kid's fault that they missed practice or they were late. Maybe their parents made them late, or maybe they had to go to a funeral, or maybe their parents made them go to grandpa's birthday party. You don't want the kids to get caught in between you and their parents. So I have a couple of basic rules. The most important one is be respectful, and you can use that rule for anything. That rule can be being on time. It can be don't goof around, don't interrupt. But if you just leave it open, like be respectful, then you can enforce it any way you want. And I'd say the last thing you want to do is have the consequences laid out in advance, because then you have to enforce those consequences. So I would just try to minimize the number of rules and keep the consequences flexible, because that way you can talk with your players, and once you have a talk with them, you can figure out if there needs to be any consequences. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks.